I turned the corner by the bakery light. Someone laughed before I saw your face. You brushed your hair behind one ear, the way you always used to. I almost stopped, you almost did, and someone called your name. Maybe it wasn't you, maybe it was. Funny how it didn't matter much. She looked familiar, like a street I'd walked before. Nothing changed, nothing needed to. We kept moving, like strangers do. But I carried that afternoon with me. You crossed the square without looking back. I checked my map for no real reason. A child ran past, someone dropped their coffee. The city never noticed. Some stories never ask to begin again. She looked familiar, like a page left open. We smiled almost, then disappeared into different afternoons. She looked familiar, that's all. The bench was facing out toward the bay. Two paper cups between their hands. He counted coins before he stood. She smiled before he turned away. The line was short, the wind was light. A ferry drifted out of sight. She moved his jacket to her side, saving his place without a word. No hurry now, no need to fill the air. The quiet fit them like it had always been there. The old pair, watching daylight leave the water. The old pair, one came back with coffee, one kept the seat warm. Nothing remarkable, nothing meant for anyone else, but somehow it stayed with me. The old pair, the old pair. They watched the gulls by their feet. Neither one looked very far, like they'd already seen enough to know where evenings always go. He pointed at a passing boat. She laughed before he finished speaking. A folded map slipped from her bag. Neither one rushed to pick it up. A child ran past with melting ice cream. your coffee. The old pair still facing out toward the harbor. The old pair, the light was fading. They never seemed to notice I kept walking, but something followed home. Not their names, not their story, just the feeling that somewhere down the road I might save a seat for someone too. The old pair, the old pair. Window table, 6:15. Steam rose slowly from the cup. He unfolded yesterday's map, then crossed out streets he'd already seen. The waitress asked anything else. He smiled and shook his head. Outside bicycles drifted by like they had nowhere else to be. He wasn't checking every minute, he wasn't watching every door. The evening settled all around him like he'd been there before. Coffee for one, nothing missing, nothing borrowed, nothing rushed. One small table, one slow evening, one more page before the train tomorrow. Coffee for one, the room kept moving. He stayed exactly where he wanted to be. He read a postcard twice before, writing only half the space. Folded it between the pages of a book already worn. Someone laughed across the room. A family gathered by the window. He looked up for just a second, then returned to his own world. Maybe freedom looks this quiet. Maybe peace needs no witness. Some journeys don't become memories until they're ordinary. Coffee for one, nothing missing, nothing borrowed, nothing rushed. One small table, one slow evening, one more page before the train tomorrow. Coffee for one, the room kept moving. He stayed exactly where he wanted to be. Coffee for one more evening before another unknown morning. He walked out without looking back. The bell above the door rang once, then disappeared. I watched the window a little longer, wondering if someday I'd look that comfortable on my own. You chose the window, I took the aisle. One empty seat between us for nearly 50 miles. The train leaned softly through the hills. Morning slipped across the glass. You turned another page while quiet stations passed. A ticket folded in your hand, a camera resting by your coat. Nothing about the moment has to be remembered. Every now and then we looked away at almost the same time. far enough to let the moment pass. Nothing happened, nothing had to. Still I watch the empty seat more than the view. The conductor checked our tickets. Someone laughed 2 rows behind. A suitcase rolled across the floor. Then everything grew still again. You traced circles on the window, following a distant road. I wondered where you started, not where you would go. The train slowed for another stop. You reached above for your bag without a word. You stepped outside. The seats stayed warm for just a little while. The station air came rushing in like it had something to say, but you were already gone. One seat away, then suddenly a little farther than before. The train moved on, the platform disappeared. I looked outside until the glass began reflecting me. Maybe that's how some people stay. Not because they spoke, but because they almost did. The bus pulled out before they reached its taillights fading down the hill. He looked at the empty road and laughed before she could. She checked the time upon her phone. He folded up the route instead. A breeze lifted yesterday's receipt across the quiet stop. No one seemed in any hurry. The night had room for other plans. Some evenings choose themselves better than we ever could. Missing the last bus didn't look like bad luck. They found another way without looking for one. 2 shadows crossing quiet streets, talking slower than the traffic ever could. They passed a bakery closing down. Someone stacked the final chairs. A cat appeared beside the wall, then wandered out of sight. He offered her his jacket, though it wasn't really cold. She pointed toward the river walk instead of calling for a ride. Every wrong turn somehow became part of the evening. Maybe plans are only starting points. Maybe memories prefer the longer road. Missing the last bus gave them back another hour they never planned. Street lights stretched across the pavement. The city slowed to The last bus. The last bus. Ticket gate clicked one last time. Footsteps gathered by the rail. 2 backpacks, 1 paper bag. A little dog asleep beside them. Someone waved before they boarded. Someone laughed to hide the weight. The ferry rocked against the pier like it already knew the tide. One more crossing, one more goodbye, one more hello. Out on the water, the last evening ferry carried more than passengers. Some were heading home, some were leaving home. The shoreline slowly drifted into softer colors. Every ending made room for someone else. Bicycle leaned against the fence. A suitcase wore another city's tag. A child counted every seagull until they vanished into gray. The captain called the final boarding. Rope slipped quietly away. The harbor didn't hold them back. It simply let them go. Lights appeared along the coast one by one, without a sound. No one hurried toward tomorrow. The water found its pace. Maybe every journey looks the same from far away, until you know who's waving and who's waiting. The last evening ferry became a line across the bay. I stayed behind, watching until the lights grew small. Some people disappeared into another town. Some people returned to someone waiting. I turned away a little slower, thinking maybe every stranger is arriving in somebody's story. I stopped beside a corner store with yesterday's map in my hands. The street name sounded unfamiliar. Every turn looked much the same. You noticed before I asked. I closed your book and looked around, then pointed past the little bridge where bicycles rolled slowly by. You smiled like it was nothing, like people did this every day. Just keep going, you said. It's easier than it looks. The way you pointed stayed with me long after I found the street. Not because you changed my day, but because you made the city feel a little exactly where you said I'd be. A violin beneath the station clock, children running after birds. I thought about turning back just to tell you that you were right. Instead I kept on walking, carrying that quiet kindness. Some directions lead to places, some remain inside your mind. Just keep going, you said. It's easier than it looks. You never knew my name, I never learned yours. Still somehow the conversation lasted longer than the walk. The way you pointed became part of every street. After that, maps folded easier. My shoulders did too. Sometimes the shortest sentence travels the farthest way. Just keep going. I think I finally did. A rack of postcards by the door, painted skies and quiet streets. I picked the smallest photograph, the one without a famous view. The woman at the counter smiled, a stamp as well. She asked me twice. I nodded, then I changed my mind and slipped it in my coat instead. The blank side waited patiently with more space than I could fill. Some words can travel farther when they never leave your hands. Postcard home, no address, no name, no reason, just one picture holding still everything I couldn't explain. Postcard home, folded gently between the pages of the trip. Outside evening found the square tables filled with quiet conversations. A street musician packed his cases. Lights appeared above the shops. I turned the card around again. Read the caption one more time. It wasn't where the photo ended, it was where my day would stay. The stamp remained untouched, the corner stayed perfectly clean. Maybe not every memory needs to arrive. Some are meant to be carried instead. Postcard home, still unwritten, still enough to take with me. Years from now, I might find it inside a book or winter coat and remember not the picture, but the person who almost sent it home. platform felt wider now. Suitcases all disappeared. Only footsteps still lingered where the crowd had been. A cleaner folded the signs. Cafe stacked its final chairs. Someone turned the station lights, row by row. The train arrived in silence, like it had 1,000 nights. Everything went back again to ordinary. After everyone left, the city stayed the same. The streets don't remember any of our names. Still every stranger left a little light. I'll carry it home, I'll carry it home. The ticket in my pocket had almost reached its end. The map was far from folding, corners worn and bent. I thought about the old couple, the traveler in the cafe, a stranger pointing down the street, the ferry home. None of them would ever know they became a part of mine. Everything went back again to ordinary. Some journeys end quietly, without a photograph, without goodbye, only a different way of seeing tomorrow. After everyone left, I finally understood. We travel looking for places, but remember people. The train rolled into darkness, morning waited somewhere else. I closed my eyes and carried them home. After everyone left, the city stayed the same. The streets don't remember any of our names. Still every stranger left a little light. I'll carry it home, I'll carry it home. The station clock was right on time, just like the day I first arrived. The coffee shop still played the same song. The chairs were set outside again. A woman swept the front steps clean. The baker raised another son. Nothing here had really changed except the way I looked around. The map stayed folded in my bag. I didn't need it anymore. Same streets, different footsteps, same morning, different eyes. Back different than I came, not because the city changed, but every face I passed along left something small behind. Back different without trying to be, just carrying a quieter version of myself. directions I once needed. I almost smiled before I knew exactly why it felt familiar. Maybe every journey ends long before the train departs. I took one last slow walk without looking for anything. Nothing happened that the world would ever notice. Still somehow everything found its place. Lighter hands and slower thoughts than yesterday. The photographs will fade someday. The streets will blur together, but strangers who never knew me changed the way I'll see the next place I call home.